"I'll pay double if you take the fat one instead," the cruel sister begged. The mountain man said, "Deal." Snow blanketed the ground for almost half the year, making travel dangerous and food scarce. The villagers were hardy people, used to living with little, yet always working hard to survive. Among these villagers lived two sisters, Mira and Lada, in a small, worn-out house at the edge of the village. Their home had cracked walls and a roof that often leaked when it rained. Despite the hardships, their parents had tried their best to keep the family together, but poverty shadowed their lives constantly. Mira, the elder sister, was strikingly beautiful. Her slender frame and delicate features drew attention wherever she went. She carried herself with confidence and grace, and villagers often whispered about her, admiring her appearance. Lada, the younger sister, was different. She had a soft, round face and a plump body that made her the target of quiet ridicule in the village. While the teasing was never cruelly loud, it was persistent, and Lada felt it deeply. She was a gentle girl, with a warm heart and a quiet nature, always willing to help anyone in need. Lada spent her days caring for the family's small herd of goats, fetching water from the mountain spring, and assisting her mother in cooking and cleaning. Though her tasks were many, she performed them patiently, never complaining, even when the work was hard. The sisters shared a complicated relationship. Mira loved her younger sister in her own way, but she often felt competitive. Mira was aware of her beauty and sometimes used it to her advantage, seeking attention from the villagers and feeling proud of their admiration. Lada, on the other hand, remained humble and unassuming, never seeking recognition. Their differences sometimes caused tension between them, especially when the villagers compared them, or when Mira's pride clashed with Lada's quiet goodness. Despite this, there was a bond rooted in family loyalty. When needed, they would protect each other, though the pressure of their harsh life sometimes strained that connection. Their parents, though loving, were preoccupied with the endless struggle to survive. Their father worked as a laborer on the few farms scattered across the mountain, while their mother stitched clothes for neighboring villagers to earn some extra money. The family often went to bed hungry, especially in the winter months when food was scarce and the cold made work difficult. In such times, even small luxuries like a warm meal or a soft blanket were treasured. The sisters learned early to share what little they had, and Lada, with her kind heart, often made sure her younger brothers and even the animals were cared for before herself. Mira, while compassionate at times, sometimes allowed vanity and pride to guide her decisions, leading to small conflicts that simmered quietly beneath the surface. One morning, as the sun rose over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, a strange excitement spread through the village. Word had reached them that a wealthy mountain man, known for his vast lands and wealth, was searching for a wife. Villagers whispered about his fortune, his mysterious life in the high mountains, and the power he held. For many, this was more than just gossip. It was a potential opportunity. In the harsh reality of mountain life, marrying well often meant security, food, and protection. For the sisters and their struggling family, this man represented a chance to escape the hardships that had defined their lives. Mira's heart raced with the news. She immediately began imagining herself as the chosen one, seeing visions of wealth, respect, and freedom from the endless chores and cold nights. She believed her beauty would naturally attract the man's attention, and that her charm would ensure she was chosen. Lada, however, felt a mixture of fear and disbelief. She had never considered that someone would notice her, let alone choose her for such an important position. Her thoughts were cautious and tentative. She feared leaving the familiarity of her home and stepping into a world she barely understood. Still, beneath the fear, a small spark of hope flickered. Maybe, just maybe, this could change her life as well. The sisters' contrasting feelings created tension in their home. Mira, excited and slightly arrogant, often teased Lada about her looks and abilities. Lada endured it quietly, understanding that Mira did not mean serious harm but still feeling hurt by the comparisons. Their parents noticed the growing tension but were too preoccupied with survival to intervene. They could only hope that, whichever path their daughters took, they would find safety and security in a world that had never been gentle to them. As the day passed, the villagers began preparing for the arrival of the mountain man. The air was filled with a mix of anticipation and nervous excitement. Families polished their homes, gathered fresh food, and dressed their daughters in the finest clothes they could manage. In the midst of this preparation, Mira's mind was consumed with strategies. She carefully planned how she would present herself, what she would say, and how she would make sure the mountain man noticed her first. Lada, meanwhile, focused on practicality. She helped her mother with the final preparations, ensuring their home looked presentable, even though her heart raced with anxiety about meeting a man she barely knew. The evening before the mountain man's arrival, the sisters sat together in the dim light of their home, a fire crackling softly in the hearth. Mira spoke excitedly about the possibilities, describing the riches and comfort that could await them. Lada listened quietly, her mind wandering to thoughts of leaving home, of stepping into the unknown, and of how different her life might become. She felt a mixture of fear, hope, and curiosity. Though Mira tried to draw her into her excitement, Lada could not fully share in it. Her heart was uncertain, and yet she could not ignore the chance for a better life that now seemed within reach. As night fell, the mountains were quiet, save for the soft howling of the wind through the trees and the distant call of animals settling in for the night. The village slept, unaware of the life-changing events that were about to unfold. Lada lay awake, staring at the wooden ceiling of their small room, thinking about her future. She wondered what it would be like to live with the mountain man, to leave the familiar paths and faces behind, and to face a life that could either be a dream or a challenge she was not ready for. Despite her fears, a quiet determination began to grow within her. She realized that whatever happened, she would need to be strong and brave, for herself and for the family she was about to leave behind. The next morning, the sound of hooves on the rocky path announced the arrival of the mountain man. Villagers gathered along the winding trails, their curiosity piqued, and whispers filled the crisp mountain air. Mira's excitement was almost unbearable. She smoothed her hair, adjusted her clothes, and tried to appear confident and alluring. Lada, standing a little behind her sister, felt her heart pound. She could see the imposing figure of the mountain man approaching, his presence commanding and his gaze sharp. Though fear gripped her, she reminded herself to stay calm, to observe, and to show the strength and patience she had cultivated over the years of hard work. The mountain man stopped before the sisters, examining them carefully. His eyes lingered on Mira first, drawn to her beauty and confidence, but there was something he noticed in Lada as well, a quiet strength, a gentle presence, and a kind heart that spoke louder than appearances. The moment was charged with tension, as if the mountain itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Mira smiled confidently, certain that she would be chosen. Lada, meanwhile, could only stand silently, unsure of her place in this unfolding moment, yet aware that her life was about to change forever. And so, the stage was set. In this remote mountain village, among harsh landscapes and humble homes, two sisters faced the possibility of a future neither had imagined. One driven by beauty and pride, the other by quiet resilience and kindness. Their paths were about to collide with fate in a way that would challenge everything they thought they knew about life, family, and the power of true character. The mountain awaited, silent and towering, ready to witness the choices, struggles, and courage that would define the lives of these two sisters forever. The day had finally arrived when the mountain man entered the village. His presence was impossible to ignore. He was a towering figure, broad-shouldered and strong, moving with a confidence that made the villagers instinctively step aside. Rumors had described him as wealthy, demanding, and perhaps even a little intimidating, but seeing him in person was something else entirely. Children peeked from behind doors, and villagers whispered among themselves. Everyone wanted a glimpse of the man whose decision could change lives forever. Mira was prepared. She had spent the past night carefully planning every detail, how she would stand, how she would speak, and how she would ensure that all eyes, especially his, would be on her. Her heart raced with excitement and a little fear. She adjusted her hair, straightened her clothes, and practiced a gentle, confident smile. She had convinced herself that beauty, charm, and poise were all she needed. Lotta, meanwhile, felt nervous and unsure. She had done nothing to prepare, nor had she imagined being noticed. Her thoughts were filled with worry. Would she be laughed at? Would the mountain man even look at her? She felt small, timid, and unworthy compared to her sister. The mountain man approached their home slowly, his eyes scanning the village as though he were assessing everything at once. When he finally stopped in front of the two sisters, he studied them carefully. His gaze first lingered on Mira. He noted her delicate features, the way she carried herself, and her confidence. Villagers held their breath, anticipating her triumph. Mira's chest swelled with pride. She was certain the man would choose her without hesitation. She felt the moment was hers, as if destiny itself had drawn the wealthy man to her. But then something unexpected happened. The mountain man's eyes drifted to Lotta. She was standing quietly behind her sister, avoiding attention, her hands folded nervously in front of her. Her round face and soft body might have seemed ordinary to most, but he noticed her quiet strength. He saw the way she observed the world with careful, thoughtful eyes. He noticed her kindness, the subtle way she carried herself with patience and humility. There was a steadiness to her, a resilience that suggested she could endure hardships without complaint. These were qualities that spoke louder than beauty or charm. As the mountain man considered the sisters, Mira realized that he had paused. Her confidence wavered for the first time. She leaned closer to Lotta and whispered urgently, her voice tinged with greed and mischief, "I'll pay double if you take the fat one instead." Her words were quick and desperate, intended to trick the mountain man into choosing Lotta, while she would secretly benefit from the deal. Mira's plan was cruel but clever, designed to give her the advantage without appearing dishonest. She imagined herself gaining wealth and security, while Lotta, in her mind, would be nothing more than a tool in this scheme. Lotta's eyes widened in shock at her sister's words. She could hardly believe what she had just heard. She felt a mixture of fear and helplessness. How could her own sister try to use her in such a way? She looked at Mira, hurt and confused, but did not speak. She knew that in that moment, any response might complicate matters. Her heart pounded, and she felt the weight of the decision that was about to unfold. She had never imagined that she would be put in such a situation, where her very life and future could be negotiated like a commodity. The mountain man remained silent for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, to everyone's surprise, he said simply, "Deal." His voice was calm, measured, and final. There was no hesitation, no surprise, and no judgment. It was as if he had seen something in Lotta that no one else could see, and he was confident in his choice. Lotta's heart skipped a beat. She did not understand why he had chosen her, nor why he did not seem angry at Mira's manipulation. She only knew that her life was about to change in ways she could not yet imagine. The villagers gasped. Some whispered in shock, unable to comprehend why the mountain man had chosen the younger, overlooked sister instead of the beautiful, confident Mira. Others nodded quietly, sensing that the mountain man had wisdom beyond appearances. In that moment, Lotta realized that the world was not always as predictable as it seemed. She felt fear, uncertainty, and a strange spark of hope all at once. Preparations began immediately for Lotta to leave with the mountain man. Her parents were both proud and anxious. torn between fear for their daughter's safety and relief that she had been chosen by someone capable of providing a secure future. Mira, on the other hand, could not hide her anger and frustration. She had expected triumph, recognition, and perhaps even admiration from the villagers. Instead, she found herself overshadowed by her younger sister, whose quiet strength had won the mountain man's trust. Mira's pride stung, and a deep jealousy began to form within her. Lada packed her belongings slowly. She chose simple clothes, practical items for the journey, and a few keepsakes from home. Each item reminded her of her family, her village, and the life she was leaving behind. She felt the weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders, not just for herself, but for the family she was leaving behind. She wondered how they would manage without her daily help, how her absence would affect the small household, and whether her new life would be as kind and just as the mountain man seemed to be. The journey was set for the next morning. Lada could hardly sleep that night. She lay awake, staring at the dark ceiling of her room, listening to the sounds of the mountain village. The wind howled softly outside, and distant animals moved in the shadows. Her mind was a swirl of emotions, fear, excitement, and curiosity all tangled together. She wondered what awaited her on the mountain, how she would adjust to the new home, and whether she would be able to earn the respect and trust of the mountain man. Despite the uncertainty, a quiet determination began to grow within her. She realized that she could not control everything, but she could control how she faced the challenges ahead. Morning arrived with a golden light spilling over the mountains. Villagers gathered along the narrow paths to witness the departure. Mira stood among them, her face a mask of frustration and anger, while Lada walked slowly toward the mountain man, her heart pounding with anticipation. The mountain man's assistants were ready with horses and supplies for the journey. Lada mounted a sturdy horse, feeling the unfamiliar weight of responsibility. She looked back at her village one last time, her eyes meeting her parents, who nodded silently, wishing her well. She felt tears prick her eyes, but she swallowed them, knowing that this was the start of a new chapter in her life. The mountain man observed Lada closely as they began to ascend the rugged path into the mountains. He noticed her nervousness, but also her attention to detail, her careful movements, and the way she treated the horse with respect and patience. He began to see her character more clearly, realizing that her strength was quiet but undeniable. Lada, in turn, began to notice small details about him: his fairness, his sharp observation, and the way he seemed to understand people beyond their appearances. Though she still felt fear, she began to sense that perhaps she could trust him, that perhaps this journey could lead to a life better than the one she had known. As they climbed higher, the terrain became more difficult. Rocky paths, steep inclines, and cold winds tested Lada's endurance. She struggled at first, unsure of how to manage the horse and the supplies. The mountain man observed silently, stepping in only when necessary, offering guidance with patience rather than criticism. With each step, Lada's confidence grew. She realized that she was capable of more than she had ever believed. The journey, though challenging, was also teaching her resilience, adaptability, and courage. Meanwhile, back in the village, Mira's frustration deepened. She had underestimated her sister, and the villagers' whispers only added to her irritation. They spoke of Lada's courage, her quiet strength, and the wisdom of the mountain man in choosing her. Mira's plan to manipulate the situation had failed, and she began to realize that appearances were not the most important thing in life. Lada's journey was already changing her, though indirectly, teaching the villagers and Mira alike that true strength often lies beneath the surface. By the end of the first day of travel, Lada had begun to feel a mix of exhaustion and accomplishment. She had faced her fears, learned to trust herself, and even started to appreciate the majestic beauty of the mountains around her. Snow-capped peaks glimmered in the sunlight, Streams rushed past with sparkling water, and birds called from the cliffs. The harshness of the terrain was softened by its natural beauty, and Lotta felt a sense of awe. She realized that while her life had changed suddenly and dramatically, this journey could also be an opportunity for growth, learning, and self-discovery. That night, as they made camp under a canopy of stars, Lotta reflected on the events of the day. She thought about her sister's cruelty, her parents' hope, and the unexpected trust placed in her by the mountain man. She realized that life was unpredictable, but with courage, patience, and determination, she could face whatever challenges came her way. Though fear lingered, it was now accompanied by a quiet confidence. Lotta understood that she was not alone. She had the mountain man's guidance, her family's love, and her own inner strength to rely on. And so, the first chapter of Lotta's journey came to a close. She had left her village behind, faced manipulation and uncertainty, and begun to discover her own resilience. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with both danger and possibility, but she was ready to take it one step at a time. The mountain man had made his choice, and now it was up to Lotta to prove herself, not to anyone else, but to herself. The journey up the mountain continued the next morning with a quiet intensity. Lotta had spent the night in a small clearing, under a canopy of trees, listening to the wind whistle through the branches and the occasional howl of distant wolves. Sleep had been light and fragmented, her mind still swirling with the events of the previous day. She thought of her parents, the village, and even Mira, whose cunning plan had put her in this position. A mixture of fear, confusion, and determination filled her heart. She knew that whatever lay ahead, she had to remain strong and alert. The mountain was not forgiving, and neither was life. As she mounted her horse once again, the mountain man gave her a steady, assessing look. There was no malice in his expression, but there was a certain quiet authority. He did not speak unnecessarily. Instead, he watched carefully, as if gauging Lotta's reactions, her courage, and her endurance. Lotta noticed his eyes, sharp and observant but not unkind. They carried a sense of experience and judgment, yet there was also a hint of understanding. Though he was a stranger, she felt that he saw her, not just her appearance but her character, her strengths, and even her insecurities. It was both intimidating and comforting at the same time. The path they followed was steep, rocky, and treacherous. Small streams crossed the trail, and loose stones made each step dangerous. Lotta's hands ached from gripping the reins, and her legs burned from staying balanced. The horse was strong and steady, but even it struggled with the sharp inclines. Each moment required concentration. A single misstep could mean a fall or injury. Yet, despite the difficulty, Lotta pressed on, determined not to falter. She felt that every step she took was a test, not just of her physical ability but of her spirit and resolve. As they climbed higher, the mountain man occasionally spoke, giving instructions or advice. "Hold the reins tighter here," he said as they navigated a narrow ledge. "Keep your balance and focus on the horse's steps, not your own fear." His voice was calm and measured, never harsh, yet every word carried authority. Lotta followed his guidance carefully, realizing that he was not only teaching her how to navigate the mountain but also how to trust herself and her instincts. The lessons were subtle, yet profound. She began to notice her own strength, the way her body responded to challenges, and the clarity that came from staying focused and present. Along the way, Lotta also observed the mountain man in his element. He moved with confidence, never faltering, never complaining, as if the mountain itself was an extension of him. He tended to the horses, adjusted their saddles, and even helped with supplies, showing that he valued work as much as skill. There was no arrogance in him, only competence and respect for those who worked alongside him. Lotta began to understand that this man, despite his reputation for being wealthy and demanding, was fair and practical. He judged people not by appearance or status, but by their actions, their honesty, and their resilience. Hours passed as they climbed higher into the rugged terrain. The air grew thinner, colder, and more difficult to breathe. Lotta felt her energy draining, but she refused to give in. Each time her legs threatened to wobble, she reminded herself that she had survived worse days in her village. She had faced ridicule, poverty, and constant labor, and she had endured. Compared to that, this challenge, though physical and exhausting, felt like a test she could meet if she focused. The mountain man noticed her determination, the subtle strength in her posture, and the steadiness in her eyes. He nodded once in quiet acknowledgement, a small gesture that gave Lotta a surge of confidence. By midday, they reached a plateau that offered a breathtaking view of the valley below. Lotta paused to catch her breath, her horse snorting and shaking its mane. The mountain man dismounted and gestured toward the valley. "Look at what you've climbed," he said quietly. "Most people would have turned back long before now." Lotta gazed out at the sprawling landscape, dotted with forests, streams, and distant villages. The mountains seemed endless, majestic, and daunting all at once. For the first time, she felt a sense of awe mixed with pride. She realized that despite fear and exhaustion, she had made progress. She had taken control, step by step, and reached a place that many would have avoided. The mountain man continued to speak, but not in commands. He shared stories of his own life, of hardships he had faced, and of the lessons the mountains had taught him. Lotta listened intently, feeling a connection form between them. He spoke of patience, resilience, and the importance of understanding people for who they truly are. He did not speak of wealth or power. Instead, he spoke of character and integrity. Lotta realized that she was learning more than survival skills. She was learning values that would guide her throughout her life. She began to feel respect for him, not out of fear, but because of the fairness and wisdom he demonstrated. During the afternoon, they encountered a narrow cliff path, where the drop on one side seemed endless. Lotta's heart raced, and she felt the familiar pang of fear. The mountain man noticed her hesitation. "Focus on the path, not the drop," he said calmly. "Trust yourself and trust the horse. Fear will only make the path harder." Taking a deep breath, Lotta followed his advice, placing her trust in both the horse and herself. Step by step, she navigated the cliff, feeling her confidence grow with each careful movement. The mountain man smiled faintly, approving silently, and Lotta felt a small sense of accomplishment and pride she had never experienced before. As the day progressed, they stopped near a small stream to rest and refill their water supplies. Lotta knelt by the clear, cold water, washing her face and hands. The mountain man watched quietly, giving her space, but he occasionally offered guidance on handling supplies and keeping their equipment safe. They shared a simple meal consisting of bread, cheese, and dried fruits. Though plain, it was enough to replenish their energy. During the meal, Lotta felt a growing sense of camaraderie with him. She realized that he was not simply a figure of authority, but someone willing to share knowledge, offer guidance, and respect effort. It was a revelation that strengthened her resolve to continue the journey with focus and determination. The sun began to descend behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the rugged terrain. Lotta and the mountain man set up a small camp for the night. They gathered firewood, started a fire, and arranged their sleeping areas. Lotta worked efficiently, following his directions, and began to feel a quiet pride in her ability to adapt and contribute. She realized that the mountain man's choice to bring her along was not a mistake. He had seen qualities in her that even she had not fully recognized. Her courage, patience, and willingness to learn were proving to be strengths that could help her thrive in this new life. As darkness fell, the mountain man remained quiet, tending to the fire and the horses. Lotta sat nearby, reflecting on the day's journey. She thought about her sister Mira's manipulation, her parents' hopes, and the challenges she had faced so far. Though the journey had been difficult, she felt a growing sense of inner strength. The mountain was harsh, and life on it would be demanding, but she had begun to understand that she could rise to meet challenges if she remained patient, focused, and true to herself. The night was filled with the sounds of the mountain, distant calls of animals, the rustle of trees in the wind, and the gentle crackling of the fire. Lotta lay back, staring at the stars above, and felt a mixture of exhaustion and hope. She realized that the journey was not just about reaching the mountain man's home. It was about discovering her own resilience, courage, and worth. For the first time, she began to understand that her life could be more than what she had known in the village. The mountains, though daunting, held the promise of growth, learning, and a future shaped by effort and character rather than appearances. Before sleep overtook her, Lotta resolved to continue the journey with determination. She would not let fear control her. She would learn from the mountain man, trust her instincts, and prove to herself that she could endure. Her thoughts also drifted to the village, to her parents, and even to Mira. She hoped that one day they would understand that strength, kindness, and resilience mattered more than looks or cunning. With that thought, she closed her eyes, letting exhaustion and hope mingle as she prepared for the challenges of the coming days. The first leg of the mountain journey had transformed her in subtle but important ways. Lotta had faced physical exhaustion, fear, and doubt, yet she had discovered her own courage and resilience. She had begun to see the mountain man not as a stranger, but as a guide, a teacher, and a figure whose judgment was fair and insightful. She realized that this journey, though unexpected and frightening, was also an opportunity to grow, to prove her worth, and to discover strengths she had never known she possessed. And so, under the vast expanse of stars, with the mountain air cold and crisp, Lotta slept, her mind and heart filled with anticipation for the days ahead. She was no longer the timid, overlooked girl she had been in her village. She was a young woman beginning to understand her own strength, resilience, and potential. The mountain had tested her, but she had endured. The journey continued, and with it, the promise of growth, discovery, and a future shaped not by appearances, but by courage and character. The journey had been long and exhausting, but finally the mountain man's home came into view. Perched atop a steep ridge, the house looked formidable from a distance. Made of heavy timber and stone, it seemed to rise naturally from the mountain itself, blending with the rugged landscape around it. Smoke curled from the chimney, and the faint sounds of animals hinted at a life that was simple but demanding. Lotta felt a mixture of awe and nervousness as they approached. This was her new home, a place that promised safety, but also challenges she had never faced before. The mountain man guided her to the entrance and gestured for her to dismount. Lotta's hands trembled slightly as she stepped down, her legs weak from the long climb. The house was larger than anything she had seen in her village. Inside, the rooms were sparsely furnished but sturdy, designed for practicality rather than decoration. Every corner of the home reflected the mountain man's life, functional, strong, and resilient. Lotta realized immediately that she would need to work hard if she hoped to adapt to this new life. Her first task was simple but demanding, feeding the animals. The mountain man's livestock was larger than any she had tended before. Goats, chickens, and even a few cows roamed the area, each requiring careful attention. Lotta had spent her life helping with the family's small herd, but this was a different scale entirely. She struggled at first, unsure how to handle the larger animals, how to measure their feed, and how to manage the herd without causing chaos. The mountain man watched silently, offering guidance only when necessary, encouraging her to think, observe, and act with patience. Lotta worked from morning until afternoon, learning quickly. She discovered that she had more endurance and strength than she had realized. Her hands, though tired and calloused, moved efficiently. She began to recognize the rhythms of the animals, understanding which ones were skittish and which ones were calm. By the end of the day, she felt exhausted but proud. The mountain man nodded quietly in acknowledgement, a small gesture that filled her with quiet confidence. She realized that he valued effort and persistence above all else, and that no task was too small or too large if approached with focus and care. Meals were prepared simply. Lotta learned how to cook over an open fire, managing heavy pots and sparse ingredients. The mountain man taught her practical methods for preserving food, boiling water safely, and preparing meals that were both nutritious and sufficient for the demands of mountain life. At first, Lotta struggled with the unfamiliar techniques. She dropped utensils, spilled water, and occasionally burned simple dishes. But the mountain man's patience was remarkable. He corrected her gently, encouraged her to try again, and reminded her that mistakes were part of the learning process. Slowly, she improved. By the third day, she was able to prepare meals competently, feeling satisfaction in her growing independence. The mountain man also expected Lotta to help maintain the home and property. She swept floors, repaired fences, carried firewood, and even learned to mend broken tools. Each task was physically demanding, yet she approached them with determination. She realized that in this place, hard work was respected more than idle beauty or cleverness. Lotta began to understand that her value would not be measured by appearance, but by effort, integrity, and adaptability. This realization was both freeing and motivating, allowing her to focus fully on the work ahead. As days turned into weeks, Lotta's confidence grew. The mountain was no longer intimidating. It became a place of learning, growth, and discovery. She learned to navigate its paths, predict the weather, and respond to challenges with practical solutions. The mountain man, who had initially seemed distant and reserved, gradually opened up to her. He shared stories of his past, of struggles with harsh winters, difficult terrain, and loneliness. He spoke of the lessons he had learned, not from wealth or power, but from patience, perseverance, and understanding people for who they truly were. Lotta listened intently, feeling a bond forming between them based on mutual respect and trust. One afternoon, while checking on the livestock, Lotta encountered a challenge she had never faced before. One of the goats had gotten tangled in the fencing, its leg trapped in the wires. Lotta felt panic rise in her chest. She had never handled a frightened animal on her own, and the goat's struggle threatened to injure it further. The mountain man appeared quietly, guiding her through the process. He showed her how to calm the goat, untangle the wires, and ensure the animal's safety. The experience, though stressful, was transformative. Lotta realized that she could handle situations that initially seemed impossible if she remained calm and focused. Her fear gradually gave way to a sense of empowerment and capability. Life on the mountain also required emotional endurance. Lotta missed her family and the familiar faces of her village. Nights were long and quiet, with only the wind and the distant calls of animals for company. Sometimes she felt lonely, wondering if she had made the right decision. Yet, she reminded herself that every challenge was an opportunity for growth. She began to write in a small notebook she had brought from home, recording her thoughts, lessons, and progress. Writing became a source of comfort, a way to process her emotions, and a reminder of the journey she had undertaken. The mountain man continued to observe her progress with quiet approval. He did not offer praise freely, but when he did, it carried weight. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day of work, he remarked, "You are learning faster than most. Keep this determination, and the mountain will feel like home before long." Lotta's heart swelled with pride. She realized that her efforts were recognized, not for appearance or charm, but for persistence, diligence, and character. This acknowledgement strengthened her resolve to continue learning and improving. Through daily tasks, Lotta also began to develop problem-solving skills. She learned to predict weather changes by observing the sky, clouds, and wind. She discovered shortcuts on mountain paths, ways to conserve energy, and methods to manage animals efficiently. Each new skill reinforced her confidence and independence. The mountain, which had initially seemed harsh and unforgiving, now became a teacher. Its challenges pushed her to grow, and its beauty inspired her to persevere. The mountain man, too, showed Lotta the importance of observation and awareness. He taught her to notice small details, a change in an animal's behavior, the smell of approaching rain, the sound of shifting rocks, and to respond proactively rather than reactively. Lotta realized that these lessons extended beyond survival. They were lessons in patience, responsibility, and understanding the world with clarity. Each day, she felt herself growing stronger, not only physically but mentally and emotionally. One morning, Lotta woke to the sound of birds calling in the crisp mountain air. The sun was just rising, casting golden light over the peaks. She felt a quiet sense of achievement. She had adjusted to life on the mountain more than she had imagined possible. Her body was stronger, her mind sharper, and her heart more resilient. She realized that the fear she had carried from her village was slowly being replaced with confidence. She was learning that life's challenges could be met with courage, patience, and determination. Over time, the bond between Lotta and the mountain man grew. It was not built on words alone, but on shared experiences, mutual respect, and understanding. He began to share small tasks with her more fully, trusting her judgment and allowing her to take initiative. Lotta learned that trust was earned through effort and reliability, and she worked diligently to maintain it. Their relationship was simple but profound, rooted in respect, and the understanding that each person's strengths could complement the other. Meanwhile, back in the village, whispers spread of Lotta's progress. Villagers who had once ridiculed her began to admire her courage, resilience, and ability to adapt to the demanding life on the mountain. Mira, in particular, struggled with envy and frustration. Her scheme to manipulate the situation had backfired, and she could not hide her disappointment. She began to understand that true worth was not measured by beauty or charm, but by effort, perseverance, and character. Lotta's transformation became a quiet lesson for the village, that inner strength could surpass appearances, and that courage and determination were far more valuable than superficial qualities. By the end of the first month in the mountain home, Lotta had fully adapted to the rhythm of her new life. She could manage the animals, cook meals, maintain the property, and navigate the mountain terrain with confidence. The mountain man trusted her judgment and often relied on her decisions in managing daily tasks. Lotta realized that she was no longer the timid, overlooked girl she had been in her village. She had grown into a capable, self-assured young woman, respected for her abilities and character. At night, as she sat by the fire, reflecting on her journey, Lotta felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She had left the familiarity of her village, faced manipulation, fear, and uncertainty, and had emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident. The mountain, once intimidating, had become a place of learning, growth, and self-discovery. She knew that the challenges ahead would continue, but she now faced them with a heart strengthened by experience, patience, and perseverance. The mountain man, observing her quietly, understood that she had grown in ways that would prepare her for whatever life demanded. He valued her not for her appearance or background, but for her courage, diligence, and integrity. Lotta, in turn, began to feel respect and trust toward him, not born of fear, but of recognition that he could teach, guide, and appreciate strength of character. Together, they continued to navigate the challenges of mountain life, building a partnership rooted in respect, trust, and shared effort. And so, life in the mountain home settled into a rhythm. Lotta had discovered that her value was defined not by looks, charm, or cunning, but by determination, resilience, and heart. She had transformed from the timid girl, overshadowed by her sister, into a young woman capable of meeting any challenge. The mountain had tested her, but it had also nurtured her, teaching lessons that went beyond survival, lessons of patience, integrity, and the strength that comes from believing in oneself. Months had passed since Lotta first arrived at the mountain home. The timid, uncertain girl who had left her village was now a strong, capable young woman. Each day had shaped her, each challenge had tested her, and each lesson had strengthened her. Life in the mountains was hard, but it was fair. Hard work, patience, and resilience were always rewarded, and Lotta had learned to trust her own abilities. The mountain man, who had once seemed intimidating and distant, had become not only a guide and mentor but a figure whose respect she valued deeply. Lotta's days were filled with routine, yet each day brought new lessons. She rose with the sun, tending to the animals, managing supplies, and maintaining the house and property. Her hands were strong and steady, her movements confident, and her decisions thoughtful. She no longer hesitated when facing difficult tasks. Instead, she approached them with calm focus. She had learned the value of observation, noticing small details in the behavior of animals, weather patterns, and the mountain's terrain. Each detail helped her make better choices, and each success reinforced her sense of capability. The mountain man, who had once watched her with quiet scrutiny, now trusted her judgment implicitly. He allowed her to manage the day-to-day tasks with increasing independence. He observed her, noting how she handled the animals, how she planned meals, and how she adapted to unforeseen challenges. Occasionally, he offered guidance, but more often he let her take the lead. This trust meant a great deal to Lotta. She realized that her efforts were recognized not for appearance or charm, but for diligence, intelligence, and integrity. The confidence she felt in herself now matched the respect she earned from the mountain man. Evenings were a time for reflection and conversation. The mountain man shared stories of his own past, recounting the hardships he had endured, the lessons he had learned, and the mistakes that had shaped his life. Lotta listened attentively, absorbing the wisdom he offered. She realized that he valued honesty, perseverance, and character above all else. She began to see the importance of self-discipline and thoughtful action. These lessons extended beyond the practical skills she was learning. They were lessons in life, in how to face challenges with courage and integrity. One day, a particularly harsh storm swept across the mountain. Winds howled, rain poured, and snow began to accumulate at higher elevations. Lotta and the mountain man worked together to secure the animals, reinforce the fences, and protect the home. The storm was relentless, testing both their physical endurance and their patience. Lotta felt fear at first, the kind of fear that made the heart pound and the hands tremble. Yet, she remembered all she had learned, the strength she had developed, the careful attention to detail, and the value of staying calm under pressure. Step by step, she carried out the necessary tasks, and gradually, the storm was managed. The mountain man nodded once, silently acknowledging her courage and capability. Lotta realized that she had become someone who could face fear and act with determination. Beyond the physical challenges, Lotta's emotional growth had been profound. She had learned to navigate her own feelings of fear, loneliness, and doubt. Living away from her family and village had not been easy, but it had taught her independence. She realized that strength was not only in physical ability, but in the courage to face uncertainty, the patience to learn, and the humility to accept guidance. The mountain had become more than a home. It was a teacher, shaping her into a confident, capable, and resilient individual. The relationship between Lotta and the mountain man had also deepened. It was built on mutual respect and shared effort, not appearances or superficial qualities. He had recognized her inner strength early on, and she had proven it through her actions. Over time, she came to understand the subtleties of his character, the fairness, the quiet wisdom, and the understanding that true strength was often invisible at first glance. Their bond was simple yet profound, rooted in shared work, trust and the recognition of each other's abilities. Lotta realized that this relationship had taught her not only skills, but also values that would guide her throughout her life. Meanwhile, back in her village, news of Lotta's growth and resilience had spread. Villagers who had once ridiculed her now spoke of her courage and capability with respect. Mira, who had once sought to manipulate her sister's fate, struggled with envy and a growing realization that beauty and cunning could not replace hard work and character. The village had learned a quiet but powerful lesson. True strength and worth were not measured by appearances, but by perseverance, integrity, and resilience. Lotta's transformation became a story of inspiration, a reminder that even those underestimated could rise above expectation when guided by courage and determination. One morning, as Lotta tended to the animals near the edge of a cliff overlooking the valley, she paused to take in the view. The mountains stretched endlessly before her, bathed in the soft light of dawn. The wind was cool, carrying the scent of pine and the distant sounds of flowing streams. She reflected on her journey, from the fearful, timid girl who had left her village to the capable, confident woman she had become. She realized that every challenge she had faced, every lesson she had learned, had brought her to this moment. The fear and uncertainty that had once dominated her thoughts had been replaced with quiet pride and confidence. The mountain man approached, observing her silently. "You have done well," he said simply, his voice carrying calm approval. "You have learned not just to survive, but to thrive. The mountain has tested you, and you have grown stronger because of it." Lotta smiled softly, feeling a warmth in her heart. She understood that this acknowledgement was not about flattery. It was recognition of her hard work, determination, and growth. She felt a sense of accomplishment she had never known in her life before. Life continued in this rhythm. Lotta became adept at managing the home, the animals, and the surrounding land. She learned to anticipate challenges before they became problems, to plan her work efficiently, and to balance physical labor with thoughtful reflection. Her confidence grew with each passing day, and she realized that she was no longer defined by her past insecurities or by the opinions of others. She was defined by her actions, her diligence, and her character. One afternoon, the mountain man and Lotta discovered a small, injured animal near the edge of the forest, a young deer caught in a trap left by hunters. Lotta immediately rushed to help, gently freeing the deer and tending to its wounds. The mountain man observed quietly, impressed by her compassion and quick thinking. "Kindness is a strength," he remarked. "You have learned that well." Lotta realized that the lessons she had learned were not only about survival, but about being a person of integrity and empathy. She understood that true strength was not just physical skill, but also moral courage and compassion. As the seasons changed, Lotta's transformation became evident in every aspect of her life. She was stronger, wiser, and more capable. She no longer feared challenges. Instead, she embraced them as opportunities to learn and grow. The mountain, once intimidating and harsh, had become a place of empowerment, teaching her lessons that extended beyond survival to the very core of who she was becoming. She had discovered that resilience, patience, and courage could overcome fear and uncertainty, and that her own determination could shape her destiny. By the time another winter approached, Lotta was fully adapted to life on the mountain. She moved through her daily tasks with efficiency and confidence. The animals responded to her care, the home was well maintained, and the mountain man relied on her judgment more than ever. Lotta realized that she had grown in ways that could never have been possible in her village. She was no longer overshadowed by her sister, no longer timid or unsure. She had earned her place through effort, perseverance, and heart. One evening, as they sat together by the fire, the mountain man spoke quietly. "You have become more than I expected. You are strong, capable, and wise. You have earned your place here, not because of chance, but because of your choices and your efforts." Lotta felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had not only survived, but she had thrived. She had transformed from the overlooked, ridiculed girl of the village into a young woman of strength, resilience, and self-confidence. Lotta's journey had taught her that life's true value lay not in appearance, wealth, or charm, but in character, integrity, and perseverance. She understood that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. She realized that the lessons she had learned on the mountain would stay with her for life, guiding her through future challenges with wisdom and strength. As the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Lotta stood at the edge of the ridge, looking out at the valley below. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of pine and snow. She felt a profound sense of peace, accomplishment, and hope. Her journey had been long, difficult, and transformative. She had faced fear, uncertainty, and manipulation, and had emerged stronger and wiser. She had discovered her own strength, resilience, and worth, and she had earned the respect of the mountain man who had recognized her potential from the very beginning. And so, Lotta's story reached its natural conclusion. The timid girl from the village had become a confident, capable woman. She had proven that even those underestimated or overlooked could rise above expectation through courage, perseverance, and heart. Her life on the mountain was not only a story of survival, but a story of triumph, growth, and transformation. She had faced the challenges of life head-on and emerged stronger, wiser, and ready to embrace whatever the future held. In the quiet of the mountains, with the stars shining above and the wind carrying the scent of pine and earth, Lotta smiled. She knew that she had discovered the most important lesson of all, that true strength comes from within, and that character, courage, and resilience are the greatest treasures one can possess. The mountain had tested her, taught her, and shaped her, and she had risen to meet it, proving that even the most unlikely person can achieve greatness when guided by heart, determination, and unwavering courage.